Imagine waking up every day knowing you could die of thirst while surrounded by water. This deadly paradox haunted a small African village for over a century, until a 9-year-old child accomplished what engineers, experts, and governments couldn't. Hey there! Welcome to our channel. If you love inspiring stories about genius emerging in the most unexpected places, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications by clicking that bell. And don't forget to smash that like button. I'm curious, where in the world are you watching this incredible story of triumph? Let us know in the comments. In the dry lands of Western Kenya, the village of Nairobi faced a cruel paradox that felt like a supernatural curse. Just a couple miles from the community, a powerful river flowed year-round with abundant water. Yet it was impossible to use. The river, that should have been a source of life, had become a symbol of frustration. Its waters, contaminated by a unique combination of minerals from the region's volcanic soil, caused severe intestinal and skin diseases in anyone who drank it. Years of trying traditional purification methods had completely failed. The tragedy intensified during the dry season, when children and women were forced to walk up to 10 miles daily to fetch clean drinking water from neighboring villages. Many couldn't survive the journey during periods of extreme drought, and the local cemetery was filled with gravestones bearing the same cause of death: dehydration. Water experts from international organizations had visited the village on numerous occasions over the decades. Filtration systems were installed, wells were dug, and even a small treatment plant was built with foreign funding. Nothing worked. The unique chemical composition of the water kept defeating all purification attempts. As generations passed, a heavy blanket of resignation covered the village. The idea that the problem had no solution became part of the community's cultural identity. The elders told young people the legend of the Forbidden River, warning that it was a trial sent by their ancestors to test their resilience. In 2022, a severe drought hit the region, the worst in 40 years. Alternative wells completely dried up. Water sources in neighboring villages were overwhelmed. The government sent water trucks, but deliveries became less frequent as the crisis intensified throughout the country. It was in this moment of absolute desperation, when the village was about to be abandoned for the first time in its century-long history, that an unlikely hero emerged. He didn't come from a prestigious university, didn't represent an international NGO, and wasn't a shaman with ancestral knowledge. He was just Kwame, a 9-year-old boy who looked at the problem with eyes that hadn't yet learned to accept the impossible. Kwame was born during a rare storm that fell over the village after months of drought. The elders saw this as a sign. This child brought rain. His parents, Amara and Jelani, were farmers who struggled daily against the dry land and water scarcity. The little boy grew up watching this silent effort, this constant battle for survival. From very early on, Kwame wasn't like the other kids. While his friends played chase and wrestling games, he preferred taking apart broken objects he found along the way. At just 4 years old, he fixed his grandfather's old radio that had stopped working years ago. Nobody taught him how. He simply observed, thought, and did it. This boy has eyes that see the invisible, his grandmother remarked once when she caught him building a small water wheel using twigs and banana leaves. In the small village school, with its zinc roof and dirt floor, teacher Aisha quickly noticed something special about that boy with his attentive gaze and puzzling questions. Kwame absorbed knowledge like dry earth absorbs water, quickly and completely. When he learned to read, he devoured the few available books. His thirst for knowledge seemed unquenchable. Why does water make plants grow? How do clouds know when to rain? Why can't we drink the river water? Kwame's questions never stopped. Often the adults had no answers. At 7, he created a drip irrigation system for his mother's small garden, using only discarded plastic bottles and bamboo tubes. Amara's vegetables became the most lush in the village, using half the water others needed. What fascinated the boy most, though, was the river problem. In the afternoons after school, while other children played soccer with makeshift rag balls, Kwame sat on the riverbank, watching the water flow. He collected samples in small containers, mixed them with different types of soil, left them in the sun, in the shade, tried filtering them with cloth, sand, charcoal. Jelani, his father, worried. "Stay away from that water, son. It brings sickness." But Kwame couldn't understand how something so vital could be so dangerous. "The water isn't bad, Dad. It just needs to be understood." One day, a government engineer visited the school. He talked about water cycles and basic treatment. The other children scattered quickly when class ended. Kwame stayed, bombarding the man with questions. The engineer, impressed, gave the boy a small pH test kit he had with him. "I've never seen a child ask such smart questions," he admitted to teacher Aisha. At night in the family cabin, Kwame would draw by lamplight. These weren't ordinary children's drawings. They were projects, systems, diagrams. His mother didn't understand those scribbles, but she sensed there was something extraordinary about them. When the great drought of 2022 hit, Kwame had just turned 9. While hopelessness grew around him, something different was happening inside that young mind. For him, the worsening crisis didn't represent the end, but rather the urgent need to find a solution that nobody had found for a century. If everyone has already tried solving it by looking from above, he thought one night, maybe it's time for someone to look from below. And that's exactly what he did the next morning, with an idea so simple that only a mind not yet limited by the impossible could conceive it. That morning started like so many others, with the distant sound of water trucks arriving increasingly empty and less frequent. The line to get water grew longer, along with the tension between the villagers. Kwame watched everything from his cabin door. His eyes didn't just see desperate people. They saw a problem that needed solving right now. He grabbed his notebook full of drawings, the pH kit the engineer had given him, and walked with determination toward the forbidden river. The sun had barely risen when he reached the banks. The water flowed abundantly, crystal clear, cruel in its inaccessible beauty. This time, Kwame didn't just sit and observe. He began walking along the riverbank, not upstream like everyone did looking for the source, but downstream, following the water's flow. After nearly an hour of walking, something caught his eye. At a bend in the river, where the water formed a small pool, different plants were growing. They were lush, with purplish flowers. Most impressive of all, small birds were drinking from that specific spot. "The birds know," Kwame whispered to himself. He collected water samples from that specific location and tested them with his kit. The result made his eyes widen. The water there had a different pH than the rest of the river. He gathered some of the plants and ran back home. For 3 days, Kwame barely slept. In the small yard, he built a system using old buckets, makeshift tubes, and layers of the mysterious plants he'd found. His mother watched him with concern, but something in her heart told her to let him continue. On the 4th day, as the sun began to beat down on the village, Kwame filled a bucket with water from the forbidden river and poured it into his improvised system. The water slowly descended, passing through layers of sand, charcoal, and especially through the roots and stems of the purplish plants that he had arranged in a specific way, based on what he'd seen in the river pool. A small crowd was already forming around him. Some laughed at the boy's game. Others watched in silence, out of respect for his parents. After 20 minutes that felt like forever, the first drop fell from the other side of the system. Kwame carefully collected it in a small glass cup. The water was clear, without the yellowish tint typical of the river. He tested it again with his kit. The result made his eyes shine. "It's clean," he said, hardly believing it himself. But saying it wasn't enough. Kwame knew he needed definitive proof. Without hesitation, he brought the cup to his lips and drank. A deadly silence took over the place. Amara, his mother, let out a muffled scream and ran toward him. Jelani, his father, stood paralyzed. "It doesn't taste bad," said Kwame, smiling. "It's just water." Everyone waited. 1 minute, 5, 10. Kwame was still there, smiling, showing no signs of the immediate effects that contaminated water always caused. "The plants," he explained, pointing to his system. "They clean the water naturally in the river pool. The bad minerals get trapped in the roots. The birds know this. They've always known." The solution hadn't come from advanced technology or academic knowledge. It came from patient observation of nature through the eyes of a child who hadn't yet learned to ignore the obvious. "Nature had already solved our problem," said Kwame. "We just needed to learn how to see." The news spread through the village faster than the desert wind. Jelani's son drank water from the forbidden river and he's still alive. But the initial amazement quickly gave way to doubt. The village chief, the respected elder Bako, was the first to speak out against the discovery. With his 80 years of wisdom and having seen many empty promises, he gathered the council of elders. "We've seen foreigners with expensive machines try to purify this water. They all failed. How can a boy solve what generations couldn't?" said Bako, thumping his staff on the dirt floor. When Kwame tried to explain about the purifying plants to the council, many laughed. Others shook their heads with pity. "Thirst is confusing the boy's mind," they whispered. "If the water was clean, our ancestors would have discovered it," argued Makena, the village healer. "There are evil spirits in that river that no plant can drive away." Only Aisha, Kwame's teacher, showed openness to the possibility. "What if the boy is right? What do we have to lose beyond what we've already lost?" But words weren't enough. Kwame needed proof. In the following days, while he remained healthy with no signs of illness, he built a larger system in his yard. Each morning, he drank the filtered water in front of anyone who wanted to see. His courage began to spark curiosity. A week later, his mother Amara, seeing her son's determination, made a brave decision. In front of several village women waiting for the distant water trucks, she drank an entire cup of water purified by Kwame. "My son wouldn't lie," she declared. "This water tastes like hope." Still, the council of elders resisted. That's when fate stepped in. The water trucks completely stopped coming. The situation became desperate. That same week, little Tafari, Chief Bako's nephew, became seriously ill from dehydration. The 5-year-old boy was near death, and none of the healer's remedies were working. In the middle of the night, Tafari's desperate mother knocked on Kwame's door. "If you have water, please save my son." Kwame gave her his last gallon of purified water. By morning, Tafari was already showing signs of recovery. This opened a crack in the wall of skepticism. Chief Bako, seeing his grandson recover, finally gave in. "Show us how to build this system, boy. Not for me, but for those who have no choice left." Kwame smiled. "I'll need everyone's help, and especially the wisdom of the elders to identify more of the purifying plants." This last phrase was his smartest move. By including the elders in the process, he turned opponents into allies. The healer Makena, who had doubted before, now revealed she knew the purple plant well. "Our ancestors called it tears of the moon. We used it for wounds. We never imagined it could clean water." A great assembly was called. Everyone wanted to see the demonstration. Kwame set up his system in the center of the village, explaining each step with the simplicity of someone who truly understands something. The river water went in cloudy and came out crystal clear. One by one, the elders approached to taste it. Their faces changed from doubt to amazement, and finally, to hope. "Sometimes," said Chief Bako after drinking the water, "we need the eyes of a child to see what's right in front of us." The wall of skepticism had finally fallen. Now it was time to transform an individual solution into collective salvation. Excitement took over the village. After a century of suffering, the solution seemed too simple to believe. But turning Kwame's small system into something that could serve the entire community required more than excitement. It demanded work, organization, and adaptation. "We need more purifying plants," Kwame explained on the first day of collective work. "Lot more." An expedition was organized to collect the tears of the moon from the river pool. Makena, the healer, led the group, teaching them the right way to harvest while preserving the roots. "We must thank the plant before we take it," she insisted. weaving ancestral knowledge into the process. Meanwhile, back in the village, men and women worked together digging a large tank in the clay soil. Others built filters using layers of sand, charcoal, and stones of different sizes. Children collected discarded plastic bottles to create distribution tubes. The first challenge came when they realized there weren't enough plants in the river pool. The amount needed to purify water for the entire village was much greater. "We can grow them," suggested Amara, Kwame's mother, who knew a lot about farming. In an area near the river, they prepared beds for planting the tears of the moon. Kwame realized they needed to speed up growth. He remembered the drip irrigation system he'd created for his mother's garden and adapted it for these new beds. Weeks passed. The plants were growing, but not fast enough for their urgent need. That's when Jelani, Kwame's father, had an idea. What if we built the filtration system directly at the river pool, where the plants already grow naturally? The idea was brilliant. Instead of bringing the solution to the village, they would bring the village to the solution. They set up camp near the river pool and began building a filtration system right there. They used hollow bamboo as natural pipes, directing the water already partially purified by the plants to additional filters made with whatever materials they had available. Another challenge arose: how to transport the purified water to the village. Carrying it in buckets would still require too much daily effort. It was Kwame who found the answer, studying the terrain. The river pool is at a higher point than our village. We can use gravity. Using interconnected bamboo tubes sealed with natural resin, they created a rustic aqueduct that ran down the slope to a storage tank at the village entrance. The water flowed naturally, with no need for pumps or electricity. The system wasn't perfect. In the first few days, leaks were common. The amount of water still wasn't ideal. But for the first time in 100 years, clean water was reaching the village without depending on outside help. The most beautiful thing was seeing how knowledge from different generations came together. Young people contributed energy and new ideas. The elders offered wisdom about plants, climate, and natural materials. Aisha, the teacher, documented the entire process so it wouldn't be lost. A living system needs constant care, Kwame explained during a community meeting. The plants must be respected, the filters cleaned regularly, the pipes checked. The village established a rotation system. Each family would be responsible for maintenance for 1 week. Children learned in school how the system worked, ensuring the knowledge would be passed on. 3 months after Kwame's first sip, the entire village celebrated when clean water began flowing constantly from the bamboo aqueduct into the community tank. The water was always within our reach, reflected Chief Bako during the celebration. We just needed to learn to work with nature, not against it. The steady flow of clean water changed the village in ways nobody could have predicted. The transformation started subtle, like morning dew, and soon became as deep as the river itself. The first change was in time. Women and children, who once spent hours every day just fetching water, now had free time. This simple fact reshuffled the rhythm of the entire community. "I have time to teach my daughter how to weave," remarked Zuri, who used to spend half her days carrying heavy buckets. "I never thought that would be possible." Kids returned to school. Attendance, previously irregularly interrupted by journeys to find water, became consistent. Aisha, the teacher, had to adapt her lessons for suddenly much larger classes. "Before, I taught survival," she said. "Now I can teach dreams." Disease cases plummeted. Without the intestinal infections that were once routine, the small village infirmary sat nearly empty. Makena, the healer, redirected her time to researching other medicinal properties of local plants, including the tears of the moon, that everyone now deeply respected. With health and available time, agriculture flourished. Families expanded their gardens. New irrigation techniques inspired by Kwame's original system allowed them to grow vegetables that were previously impossible in the region. For the first time in generations, the village produced more food than it consumed. "We can sell the surplus at the city market," suggested Jelani during a meeting. This simple idea created the community's first agricultural cooperative. The success of the cooperative brought money. With resources, the village invested in improvements. The school roof was repaired. A small clinic was built. Solar panels were installed to provide basic electricity for common areas. But beyond the material changes, something deeper was happening. The community's mindset was transforming. Before, we defined ourselves by what we couldn't have, reflected Chief Bako during a celebration night. Now, we define ourselves by what we can create. The relationship with nature also transformed. The river, once seen as an enemy or curse, was now treated with reverence as a partner. Nobody dumped waste on its banks anymore. They planted more tiers of the moon along the entire watercourse, creating a protective strip that naturally purified its waters even more. Visitors began to arrive, curious about the natural purification system. The village established a small learning center where they shared their knowledge. In return, they received donations and new ideas from other places. Kwame, now 10 years old, remained the same curious boy, but something had changed. His eyes shone with new confidence. During the day, he attended school, but in the afternoons he worked on new projects, always observing, always questioning. "What do you want to be when you grow up?" a visitor once asked. "Problem solver," he answered simply. The village women created a new tradition. On the first Sunday of each month, they decorated the community fountain with flowers and held a small Thanksgiving ceremony. Not just to the water or the purifying plants, but to the human capacity to find solutions when everyone works together. "Water taught us something greater than quenching thirst," said Amara during one of these ceremonies. "It taught us that our greatest resources are childlike curiosity and the wisdom of elders, united by a common purpose." The village that for a century lived in the shadow of a seemingly impossible problem was now casting its own light, a light that was beginning to be seen far beyond its borders. The story of the small village and its young hero didn't stay contained for long. Like water finding its path between rocks, news flowed beyond the community's borders. First came journalists from a small regional newspaper, then a documentary team from a national broadcaster. The story of the boy who solved a century-old problem using only local plants and careful observation captured the imagination of an entire country. "Natural engineering by a natural engineer," the headline read. Images of the simple yet effective purification system spread across the internet, reaching corners of the world that Kwame didn't even know existed. 6 months after implementing the system, a delegation from 3 neighboring villages arrived, led by their respective chiefs. They also faced problems accessing clean water, though for different reasons. "We've come to learn from a child," announced one of the chiefs without any shame. "Because only a fool refuses wisdom, no matter where or it comes from." Kwame, always observant, noticed something important. Each region had specific challenges. What worked in his village would need to be adapted for other places. He then suggested creating the first water gathering, a forum where communities could share their water-related problems and solutions. The event, initially planned as a small meeting, transformed into a festival that attracted dozens of communities. Under the shade of ancient trees, people exchanged knowledge that neither universities nor governments had documented. A UN representative visiting the festival was amazed. "We're spending millions on water purification technologies when the answers might be growing right beside us." The country's education ministry implemented a program inspired by Kwame, encouraging children in rural schools to observe and propose solutions to local problems. They called it the Young Eyes Program. In the first 2 years, more than 50 innovations emerged from this simple invitation to look at the world with childlike curiosity. Universities offered scholarships to Kwame, but he and his parents decided it wasn't time yet. "First, I need to learn more from the river," he explained. "Nature is still the most important school." On his 12th birthday, he received a visit from Wangari, a famous environmentalist who had won the Nobel Prize. After seeing the system and talking at length with the boy, she made an announcement that would change the future of many communities. "I'm creating the Kwame Fund for Natural Solutions," she declared. "We'll identify children with brilliant ideas in poor communities and give them the resources to turn these ideas into reality." By the third year after the discovery, 20 similar systems were already working in different parts of the country, each adapted to local conditions. A team of scientists finally managed to isolate the compound in the tears of the moon that neutralized the toxic minerals. The discovery led to new treatments for waters contaminated by mining in other parts of the world. As for Kwame, he remained a child, playing, studying, sometimes getting into trouble like any other boy his age. But something in him had changed forever: his understanding of his own power. In an interview with an international channel, when asked how he felt being called a genius, his answer surprised everyone. "I'm not a genius," he said simply. "I just didn't know it was impossible." This phrase, translated into dozens of languages, inspired children around the world to question the impossibles that adults accepted as absolute truths. The true magic of Kwame's story wasn't just in solving the water problem. It was in redefining who can solve problems. It was in the reminder that complex solutions don't always require complex technologies. And most importantly, it was living proof that our biggest obstacles might not be the problems themselves, but the tired and skeptical eyes through which we see them. In schools across the region, teachers began asking students not just, "What did you learn today?" but "What did you question today?" The river that for 100 years represented frustration and death now nourished not just bodies, but dreams. The water flowing through that valley nurtures crops, but also a new generation that grew up knowing the limits of what's possible are more flexible than we imagine. On full moon nights, when the silver light makes the tears of the moon shine. Along the riverbanks, the elders tell children the story of the boy who didn't accept the impossible. And somewhere on that same bank, now a teenager, Kwame watches the running water and wonders, what other problem is waiting for fresh eyes? Because that's the true lesson that remained. Humanity's greatest advances rarely come from accepting the world as it is, but from imagining the world as it could be, and having the courage to build the bridge between these two worlds, even when everyone says that bridge is impossible. So, friends, what did you think about little Kwame's amazing journey? A child who turned a century of impossible into possibility with just a different way of looking at things? If this story touched your heart like it touched mine while telling it, help me spread this message of hope and innovation around the world. Hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss our next inspiring stories about extraordinary people who are changing the world with simple but powerful ideas. Leave a like so more people can learn about Kwame and so many other unsung heroes who deserve to be celebrated. Each like is like a little tear of the moon. It might seem insignificant on its own, but together with others, it purifies and transforms. And now, I really want to know, which part of this story touched you the most? Is there some impossible situation in your community that might just need a fresh perspective to be solved? Share in the comments. Who knows? Your idea might inspire someone on the other side of the world. As Kwame taught us, sometimes the biggest revolutions start with the simplest question: what if? So, what if you subscribed right now and became part of this community of questioners and dreamers? The clean water of ideas is waiting for you.